Hey there, YouTube and Whooper Club fans. Fruit Taco, coach of the Route 1 Burbs here, bringing you coverage of the finals of the Paldea Conference this season. Joined once again by my co-host and coach of the Seattle Steamrollers here, Chad. Thanks for joining me again.
Thanks for having me.
We had enough coaches this season that we decided to split into two conferences, Johto and Paldea, with the winners of each conference going head-to-head in the championship match. In the Paldea Conference, the third-seeded Waterdeep Wobbuffets, coached by Steve Chuck, challenged the number one-seeded Newport Noctowls, led by Alpha Owls, the only team in either conference to make it through the regular season undefeated. Can the Wobbuffets dethrone the kings of this season? Well, let's jump into it. The Noctowls are Kilowattrel, Iron Moth, Hydreigon, Great Tusk, Rotom Mow, Poltegeist, Tyranitar, Farigiraf, Azumarill, Fortress, and Dondozo. They'll be going up against the Wobbuffets, who will have Weavile, Roaring Moon, who cannot Terra, Gengar, Sandy Shocks, Quaquaval, Dragonite, who cannot Terra, Scovillain, Klefki, Scizor, Orthworm, and Torkoal. Looking at the speeds here, both teams have the same top speed, but I think the Wobbuffets come out on top with some extra mons in those top speed tiers, and they dominate the middle speeds as well, with options to further boost their speed with things like Photosynthesis. Looking at some key players for each team for the Noctowls, the Wobbuffets are weak to fighting and ground, with resists covering for several fire and rock weaknesses. So I think Great Tusk looks absolutely great here. He hits the ground and fighting weaknesses with coverage for the ground immunities. Azumarill, well, nothing resists both stabs, and Azumarill can be a monster with a Choice Band or even Belly Drum. Titar could also be pretty interesting here, as only Orthworm resists rock and ground. Dondozo obviously looks great, helps stop the setup walls such as Roaring Moon and Quaquaval, and lastly, Iron Moth. Fire and Fairy is only resisted by Torkoal, so I could really see Moth doing some good things here. What do you look at the Noctowls here? What do you think is good for them?
Yeah, I I just see like an overall really balanced team. I don't see really any mons that like stand out as like can or can't come. I mean, obviously the ones that you mentioned are pretty good. I think that based on like how dominant his season has been, I would expect just a highly varied team that is pretty effective. Maybe the Poltegeist kind of stands out as something that would be somewhat unlikely to come, just because I think it's kind of a bit of a one-trick pony. But even that, he's done a couple of different things within this season.
Mm-hmm. Now, moving on to the Wobbuffets, the Noctowls are weak to Fairy and Rock, with Dragon and Flying being relatively unresisted. So going off of that, Roaring Moon obviously looks great. Good speed with Dragon Dance and Photosynthesis, and only 2 Dragon Resists on the other team? Yep, seems good to me. Sandy Shocks looks pretty good. Power Gem coverage could really make this a strong Mon in the sun, being able to just hit those unresisted hits, maybe with a Terra Rock even. Choice Spikes in the sun, just going to start murdering things. Dragonite, maybe mixed Dragon Dance with Thunder for the Dondozo. That could be pretty interesting too. What do you see as key players for the Wobbuffets this match, Chad?
Yeah, I can talk a bit more about this later, but I think one of the things that's interesting is that, with the two conferences, obviously each conference does draft kind of the same mons. I think Steve's team actually winds up pretty similar to my team and has kind of similar strengths and weaknesses. I think his team, obviously it has the screen support option and Klefki. I think it's a very offensive team that has kind of an optional weather core. I don't see a lot of bulk with it. So I think it's pretty much going to have to go, some sort of like hyper offense or some sort of breaker thing to get through it. I mean, obviously a big decision is whether or not to bring the weather core. But other than that, I just think you're right. I think Roaring Moon looks really good. I think Sandy Shocks is really good at pivoting. I've liked a lot of what I've seen about Quaquaval. I think all those would be great breaks.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. Looking, at the matchup as a whole, I think I definitely have to favor the Noctowls. They are undefeated for a reason, but I think you kind of alluded to this earlier. I expect the Noctowls to play a pretty straightforward game here, while the Wobbuffets, I think will be leaning into a little bit trickier of a team with, some setup options, maybe some tricky Terras, and definitely trying to set up for kind of a specific end game where the Noctowls are probably just going to try and play a straightforward, balanced game and try and just come out on top in the end. That seem kind of what you're thinking too?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I guess I think Jimmy can be like I think Jimmy straightforward is still a little variable. You know, I think he's pretty known for trying to do like the trick items and that sort of thing. But I would definitely expect kind of a more generic strategy from the Noctowls. Whereas I think the Wobbuffets would probably have something really tailored to try and beat what they're gonna what they predict he's gonna bring. I mean I think just because like I would agree that I would relatively strongly favor the Noctowls just based on past performance. I mean, I think they even won this matchup obviously since they're undefeated earlier in the season. But yeah.
All right, well, with that out of the way, let's jump into what each coach is actually bringing to the match. Looking at the Noctowls here right now, we're going to start off with Iron Moth, max special attack and speed timid to speed tie Gengar. Assault Vest lets it soak up some special hits. And then we've got Flame Charge and Fiery Dance, giving it some sweeping potential, being able to boost both speed and special attack. Then you've got the Ground-type Terra Blast, which lets it hit Torkoal and Sandy Shocks. It's only lacking super effective coverage for Scovillain here. I actually really like this set. I think, the Flame Charge into Fire Dance is very cool. It could be, a little awkward to actually get both those boosts, but if he does, like, this thing looks absolutely devastating. What do you think about this Moth here?
It's pretty good. Yeah, as you mentioned, it has good coverage. I would say, or I mean, it has good coverage in general. I would say I think the one weakness that maybe stands out to me is I think it's maybe a little lacking in coverage moves without terraing. Like, you have the dual fire moves, obviously, which I think it is helpful to get both the speed boost and the special attack boost. And then you have Terra Blast. So you kind of have like three moves where you really only have one coverage move without terraing, and then you have the Dazzling Gleam. I definitely think it is useful though. It has a great speed tier in the match, and it's obviously just been overall very strong mon. The Assault Vest is kind of useful for taking damage. Kind of maybe I'll do kind of a summary at the end, but as I mentioned, I think Steve is probably going to go some sort of like hyper offense thing, so it does make sense to do bulk because I think when you're kind of counting hyper offense, I think you don't really need to go for kind of raw power. You need to go for, hey, I need to be able to take a couple hits and do enough damage back to kind of break, or to not really break through, but to KO their offensive threats. So
Yeah, you're looking for consistency. And yeah, no, this looks real good. Moving on to Dondozo, you've got max HP and defense with Rocky Helmet, letting it just wall all of those big ol' physical setup sweepers. EQ plus Body Press hit 7 out of the 11 Pokemon on the other side super effectively, with Rest Talk keeping it healthy. Terra Fighting gives it a nice neutrally defensive type while boosting Body Press. I gotta say, no real complaints here either. I always think, Rest Talk is a little bit gimmicky. It's a little bit, potentially inconsistent. Steve has a fighting immunity, has a couple ground immunities, so it could be a little awkward, but, like, he's really just looking for this thing to, honestly, I think, just wall and chip things down with Rocky Helmet, so I think this looks very good. What do you think?
yeah, I think it looks really great as a physical wall, and I think Steve's probably leaned a bit more on the physical side this season. Obviously, he has a couple special threats, and honestly, I probably am a bigger fan of Rest Talk than most. I think Suicune's like probably my favorite Pokemon with kind of its classic, Rest Talk setup set. So I would love to see this thing kind of go off in the conference final.
Yeah. We've got Great Tusk up next. He's bulky with a bunch of HP and near max special defense with enough speed and a jolly nature to outspeed Roaring Moon after a rapid spin. EQ plus Ice Spinner hit 6 Pokemon super effectively. Then you've got Rapid Spin and Bulk Up to let it set up to clean late in the game. Terra Water gives it a better defensive type, and, well, I'm not sure how in love with this set I actually am. Doesn't have really anything to hit Orthworm, and it wants to set up for multiple turns getting bulk ups and a rapid spin boost. Terra makes it weak to Sandy Shocks. I just see this set being a bit awkward to actually use in the match. What do you think of this set?
I agree. I mean, obviously the ice coverage is helpful for the dragons that Steve has. Maybe he's counting on Orthworm not coming. But it does feel like I think if you look at this team in general, I think the one thing that I would say that it lacks is speed control. Like obviously you have a Scarf T-Tar, but Tyranitar isn't really that fast.
Yeah.
And then you have Priority Aqua Jet on Azumarill. I would have just maybe liked to see like I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it would have replaced this specifically, but I think Kilowatt Earl could have been a good bring for the team. Like I think electric coverage would have been relatively nice versus Steve. And it does feel like that there's you know like there's a lot of bulk, as I mentioned, which I don't think is necessarily bad when you're going against a hyper offense team or a hyper offense team. But I think maybe at least having one pretty good sea control option would have been nice. And I see this as maybe something that could have been replaced. Unless you're looking for like specifically like something that has really great hazard removal, I guess. But like I feel like mixing the hazard removal and the setup can be a little hard to swing, especially when you don't have necessarily the best coverage moves.
Yeah, I mean, I think this set just seems a little bit more unclear than some of the other sets. Like the Moth and the Dundozo seemed relatively straightforward. The other sets here look pretty straightforward. This one, I just not exactly sure what he's going for here. Even, just like putting like close combat over bulk up or something, would give it a better identity as, just trying to get a rapid spin and then break. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's not terrible, but I definitely am not in love with this set. Moving on, we've got Hydreigon with max special attack modest and enough speed to outspeed Dragonite, but not Jolly Quaquaval. Draco Meteor plus Eject Pack makes for power with surprise momentum. I think Eject Pack a little bit underrated, underutilized item, especially on Draco users. Flamethrower hits the dragon resists. U-turn and Stealth Rock give it nice utility and momentum. Terra Steel lets it resist dragon and fairy attacks. I do like this set, but as much as I do like the Eject Pack item, I think it's a bit gimmicky here. I mean, really, what wants to take a Draco besides the mons that you threaten with Flamethrower? I mean, maybe it lets you come in and, chunk Dragonite while pivoting out to not get smacked back, but I do think that it's a little bit redundant here, since I think pretty much anything switching in, you could just hit with a Flamethrower instead. What about you?
Yeah, I probably like it maybe a little more than you do. I I think the eject pack can be a little gimmicky, but I think the limitation of it obviously is that it's kind of a one trick pony. I think Jimmy's maybe going into this expecting the match to be pretty fast, because I think they're both probably going to have pretty offensive teams besides the Dundozo. So like it's not like you're necessarily counting on a lot of recovery going in there. I you know I'm probably not the hugest fan of eject pack, but I can definitely see the momentum angle. Especially because I don't really see any pivoting on here, correct me if I'm wrong, outside of this mon. So even just getting that one extra pivot turn could be nice, where maybe you get a free switch. Because like I I think it's you could definitely say that Draco's kind of redundant coverage with flamethrower, but like when you factor in stab, it's pretty much double the
Oh yeah.
power. So it's definitely nice to getting off a breaking hit on something, and I definitely appreciate the squeezing stealth rock on him on. Like I think maybe T-Tar would have been an obvious stealth rock user if you could kind of like get rid of the choice scarf, but I think it's like I think if you see a team without stealth rock, you have to really wonder why, because I think stealth rock's just so good. So I think it's kind of nice to see the stealth rock option.
Oh yeah, no, I like this set. I just think that like since you have U-turn and pretty much anything switching into Draco is gonna be slower or weak to flamethrower anyway. Like I just think it's a little bit redundant, and I think Hydreigon looked really good offensively. So maybe like boots to let it come in. Like, not bad. I think this is a perfectly good set. Just a little something. Just some thoughts on it. Moving on to Tyranitar, though. It's got max attack and near max speed Jolly with a choice scarf to outspeed Gengar and Adamant Roaring Moon. Stone Edge and Rock Blast are stab moves. Earthquake hits several weaknesses, boosted by Terra Ground. Brick Break clears away any screens. This is a weird set. A couple extra speed EVs to outspeed something like a speed creeping Moth would be, I think, pretty good. And I think Dragon Dance would just be more reliable over Scarf when Steve has several resists to each of the moves he's bringing here. Terra Fire to avoid Will-O-Wisp and dance in front of Torkoal, Resist Berry to dance in front of something like Sandy Shocks. I think this is just another awkward set here. You see much from this Tyranitar here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could give Jimmy the benefit of the doubt. I assume he probably spent a lot more time prepping for this match than I did looking at his team. But I definitely think he's making some really hard reads on coverage moves. Like it kind of reminds me of the Iron Moth, where it's like, do you really need the two rock coverage moves? Obviously, you can have the rock blast for sub and then the stone edge for more power on average. But I guess I think Tyranitar has some really great coverage moves. Like you could always run crunch as like kind of a neutral stab option. Um, I think the brick break is probably in case Steve brings screens.
Yeah.
But like I'm not the biggest fan of Scarf T-Tar. I think it can be fine, but I think it does have a really low speed tier. I could maybe see the Dragon Dance as like another maybe setup option. Like maybe kind of as you mentioned, if you think the Great Tusk set could be a little different, maybe you could use T-Tar as your setup and then maybe a different kind of thing. But yeah, I would agree. It does strike me on the surface as a little awkward set, but who am I know? Maybe it's just some really high IQ reads on what the opponent's going to bring. So.
Sure, I certainly don't doubt Jimmy's team building skills at all. Then last up we have Azumarill, max HP and almost max attack with an Assault Vest and a couple of special defense EVs. This always lives Specs Timid Gengar's Sludge Bomb as well as Specs Timid Sandy Shock's Thunderbolt out of Sun or Volt Switch in Sun. Liquidation, Play Rough, and Aqua Jet are useful stabs, with Brick Break again to clear away any screens that come. Terra Fairy lets it lose its water weaknesses, and I generally like this set. Sun could neuter the power of something like a banded set that just wants to spam Aqua Jet, so I can understand going with something like Assault Vest here. It, might be a little bit extra over a Resist Berry, but this lets it live, a couple different hits depending on what comes. A couple Sandy Shocks hits, could let it live Gengar. I think this is just a pretty all-around useful set here. So I'm pretty happy with it. What about you?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's pretty useful. I would have been maybe curious, whether you need the dual water stab, or you could have squeezed something else on there. Obviously, it's nice having the priority and the neutral move, but if you're I guess as we'll see in a bit, if your opponent might bring Sun, maybe having another coverage move option would be nice. But I think that's kind of nitpicking. I think it's a very good set.
Yep. All right, well, looking at the team overall, I think we were somewhat accurate. It's a pretty just all-around solid team, not leaning too hard in any one direction. Anything you've got to say about this team overall before we move on to the Wobbuffets?
Yeah, I think it's really solid. I think it's kind of a classic Noctowls team. Very balanced, but with a couple of things in there that might strike you as a little gimmicky. But I think a lot of times when you see it, it winds up working out. So is it really that gimmicky then?
Yep. All right. Well, let's move on to the Wobbuffets. Starting it off for the Wobbuffets is Roaring Moon, max attack Jolly with enough speed and a Scarf to outspeed Scarfed Iron Moth. Outrage and Crunch are Stab with Thunderfang to hit the water types and U-turn for momentum. I gotta say, I really like this set. Outrage looks super spammable late game as a cleaner, with Thunderfang 2-hit KOing max HP Azu after rocks, and it's even better than with an attack boost in the Sun. I think this is definitely, looking at the team, the Wobbuffets' clear intended win condition, looking to late game just clean up with Outrage. What do you think about this Roaring Moon set?
I think it looks pretty good. I really don't like the Fang moves. I think they're just so weak that it's hard to justify them. I mean, it does strike me as something maybe specifically for Azumarill, which I don't know if it gets a better move to hit that, so maybe that's fine. But I guess I would have maybe looked for something like EQ or something like that. Just because I think I don't know if there's 65 or 75 base power, but I just think that's really. That's some pretty weak sauce stuff, you know what I mean? But other than that, I think it's a good set. Nice cleaner, as you mentioned, plus the pivoting.
Yep. Going on to Dragonite, we have max HP, max special defense with boots to let it wall Hydreigon? What? I was talking to the coach before the match, and he said, this is for Hydreigon. From non-specs Modest Hydreigon, Draco Meteor actually needs 2 max rolls to be able to KO, which is a 1 in 256 chance. Roost lets it heal up on that second Draco after switching into the first. Draco lets it hit back with extreme speed as priority, and Thunder two-shotting max HP Azu and physically defensive Dondozo after rocks. I gotta say, I love this set. I don't know quite how good it is, but I do love it. It's really gimmicky and requires multi-scale to wall Hydreigon, but it's still a decent wall to something like Moth or Kilowattrel otherwise. I think Thunder is a bit risky on the with the sun, but I gotta say, I think like we said, the Wobbuffets were going to go in a bit kind of more gimmicky, hard committing to some strategies. So I definitely see what they're going for here. What about you?
Yeah, I I I think it seems like a decent set. I mean, like I would have maybe liked to see a little more neutral coverage moves. Because I think if you're going the hard Hydreigon counter, like I can see the Roost and the Draco and the Max Spadef. Like the extreme speed with no attack investment, and then also the Thunder that's going to be 50% accurate in the likely Sun that you have up. I think that that's maybe a little rich for me in terms of gimmicky coverage moves. I would say maybe specifically the Thunder stands out to me because like I can always see the extreme speed as kind of like a pick off thing, if you really want the priority move. But like, like it's a wall, but it has Draco, so it's not going to stay in that long because you're going to lose special attack. And then your other options are maybe 50% accurate Thunder or extreme speed. Like I would have maybe liked to see something besides Thunder as a coverage move there. But it does seem like Steve's really hard going into the electric coverage. I see the first two mons seem like they have kind of a maybe shoehorned on their electric coverage move, so maybe he is very worried about the water types. But
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think Roaring Moon is kind of his. He's really invested in that. So taking out the Azu and the Dondozo, which are going to be kind of the two biggest walls to it, I can definitely see leaning in that direction. But yeah, Thunder, we'll see if it pays off for him. Going on to Quaquaval, we've got Max Attack Adamant with just enough speed to outspeed Poltegeist, Aqua Step and Close Combat for stab and a speed boost, Terra Grass, Terra Blast with Expert Belt to 1 and 2 shot Azu and Dondozo after rocks respectively. Substitute lets it get a good hit in on anything switching into it, and, well, this is a pretty all-around solid set. I think Expert Belt, when you're only hitting 6 Pokemon super effectively, including your Terra, is awkward, but again, he seems to be really dialing in on those water types, and, it puts those into the KO ranges he wants, so I understand why he has it. What do you think about Quaquaval here?
yeah, I think I think it's a good set. I could definitely see it as a win con, maybe in addition to the Roaring Moon. I think it gets really nasty when you can get those Aqua Steps and Moxie Boost. If you have his Lake Lane Cleaner, you can obviously use it as an early game breaker too versus the water types as we mentioned. Overall, yeah, I think it's a solid set. I think it's maybe the intended Terra. Maybe I'm just kind of going that off of the fact that it has Terra Blast, and I don't think any other Mon has specifically a Terra move. And I don't think really any other Mon stands out to me, as being a particularly great Terra abuser. Obviously, there's the two Mons that can't Terra, and then maybe the Scovillain to a certain extent would be a good Terra abuser because it's a sweeper. But yeah, I definitely like this set.
All right. We've got Sandy Shocks up next. Max Special Attack, almost max speed Timid to outspeed Hydreigon. Volt Switch and Earth Power Art stabs, Stealth Rock, and then Backup Sun with Sunny Day to get that special attack boost in the sun. Pasho Berry should let it live a water type attack. Now, Sun already helps some with that, and with weaker Volt Switch, you don't get Oko's back. But, I mean, I think it's still quite useful on this set. Terra Fairy probably makes it a backup Hydreigon resist, I would assume. I like the set, but I don't know. I might have gone for like Terra Rock Power Gem to make this a threatening cleaner or a screen over the sunny day. But again, it seems to be going all in on that Roaring Moon, so I understand wanting that backup sun if that is what the game plan that you are leaning into. What do you think about this Sandy Shocks here?
Yeah, I I like it. I maybe would have run Heat Rock over Pasho Berry. Like it seems like, I guess like general comment, as I said before, it seems like there's very heavy leaning into being, anti-water type, which I guess is fair based on what we saw from Jimmy's team. But like, I think you know I think the extra 3 turns would be more generically useful than having like a Pasho berry.
Mhm.
I guess maybe you're really trying to live aqua jets or something like that. But yeah.
All right. Torkoal is coming as, of course, the default Sunsetter, almost max HP and max defense with Heat Rock, no surprises there. Stealth Rock, Body Press, and Rapid Spin are also pretty standard. Lava Plume is powered up in the sun with a good chance to burn. Terra Steel lets it resist rock and lose those water weaknesses. Well, this is just a pretty standard, pretty solid Torkoal set. I don't know, Terra Ground over Steel might have been nice to not pick up the ground and fighting weaknesses, but that keeps the weak water matchup, so sure. And then, I don't know, Lava Plume, I understand, we're going, more offensive, we're getting the damage with the chance to burn, but Will-O-Wisp looks so nice, I might have just gone for that over Lava Plume for, T-Tar switching in Dondozo, Azumarill, there's lots of things that I would love to just get that guaranteed burn on. What do you think about Torkoal here, Jed?
Yep. I think it's a very standard support set. I think it may be a little pressure to spin in the match, but that's not really an issue with the Torkoal set. I think it's just the fact that there's really no other spinner. It seems like I think it'll be fine for setting stun. The standard set's a standard set for a reason. I guess maybe looking at the team in general, it would have been nice to maybe see a different removal option, but I don't know where they would have quite squeezed it on. Quackle is a little move slot pressured. But yeah, overall decent set.
All right, and last up is Scovillain. Max special attack, near max speed timid, outspeeds Poltegeist, and in sun outspeeds Scarfed Iron Moth. Fire Blast in Sun is boosted stab with Stomping Tantrum to cover that Iron Moth switching in. Power Herb Solar Beam plus Leaf Storm is to counter T-Dar, although there are some problems with that. The intent was for Power Herb to get Solar Beam off even in Sand, and then after which a follow-up Leaf Storm would have a good chance to KO Max Bedef T-Tar even with the Sand boost. However, it turns out that, I certainly didn't know this until I was prepping for this video. Turns out Sand has Solar Beam's power, so in Sand, 2 Leaf Storms is actually stronger, but hey, now it's a cool 3-hit KO, and I definitely didn't know that, and I know that Steve does most of his calcing on a homemade damage calculator, so I definitely understand him missing that, and it was a real cool idea, unfortunately that it doesn't quite work there. Grass Terra gets rid of the rock weaknesses while resisting water and ground. It's a cool set, but definitely a little gimmicky and flawed there. I think even if the Solar Beam into Leaf Storm in the Sand worked how Steve had thought it would, if it's full special defense T-Tar, you're probably not as worried about it anyway, so something like Wisp or Leech Seed in that slot would have been nice, and even if you are going for hard on that T-Tar counter, the problem with Solar Beam is Grass Knot is the same base power as Solar Beam against T-Tar, Dondozo, and Great Tusk without being weather or item reliant. So if you want that double Grass Stab Leaf Storm to hit the Azumarill, which Grass Knot would be weaker against, that's fine, but the second grass move, I think, definitely should have been Grass Knot, as it's basically Solar Beam, but you get that item slot back. What do you think about Scovillain here? I definitely think this thing could still do some work, just not quite the way Steve had intended.
Well, clearly he's picking Solar Beam so he just doesn't have to make contact with his opponent. What if it's
true.
you saw the Rocky Helmet Dondozo on the team. I think it's just a big brain play to avoid the Rocky Helmet chip. But on a more serious note, I definitely did not do that much research to know all the different grass interactions. I think I might kind of get into my general comments on the teams. I think a lot of my general comments focus around the weather cores. So as I said before, I think Steve's team is somewhat similar to mine, which I think it has kind of a similar strengths and weaknesses to mine, which I think one of the things that my team really felt like it struggled with later in the season was it felt like it had a problem dealing with walls. And because the team was so hyper offense, I think you kind of saw this in our match in the playoffs, there's only so much recovery on it. So basically you only have so many options to get through the wall, or so many times to get through the walls before you basically run out of HP and then your team just dies.
Mhm.
Like, and and he has the weather core. Like, I don't think I would have necessarily brought the weather core here because I, I, I feel like that this team is just kind of like I said, like I think it's like kind of like a hyper offense team that's going to struggle to get through some walls, and then when it struggles to get through some walls, it doesn't have the recovery or the like options to kind of like do other things. So I personally probably would have maybe brought something like a Klefki Gengar over the Scoville and Torkoal. Like I don't think Steve favored screens as much as I did in the season, so like I don't think his opponent would necessarily counter team it that much.
Mhm.
I like obviously we saw the couple of brick break options, but like I mean like the opponent has an auto weather setter too, so like I feel like leaning into the weather here is very risky. Obviously it is nice to get the photosynthesis boost, but like I like at least my experience has been like if you get the screens up, it can kind of it fixes your I have a hyper offense team with no bulk problem, and it kind
Sure.
of lets you like go about the match like a lot longer. And then so like I would have probably done like Klefki Gengar or maybe Klefki something else Gengar was just my initial impression over Torkoal Scoville and just like Klefki with maybe like a standard set like screens, Thunder Wave, and then maybe Play Rough, or you could go Spikes if you really wanted to. But I think the Play Rough would have been nice for Hydreigon, and then the T Wave would have been great just to cripple the AD opposing team. And then Gengar is very strong behind screens. You just get off really those really strong Shadow Balls and Sludge Waves and whatever. And then maybe squeeze Rapid Spin on Quaquaval. Maybe had a different setup Dragonite. But like I think in general this team will probably struggle, when you have a wall as great as Dondozo that you're against. It can be a little hard to get through. Obviously, maybe that's what you see with all the grass and electric cover just to try to get through the Dondozo. And then I could just see, as we saw on Jimmy's team, like when you're going against a hyper offense team, you don't necessarily need to run really strong mons to beat it. You can just run fast mons, or you can just run like bulkier mons, so you can take a hit and then kind of chip it down.
Mhm.
So I probably would not have gone the weather core in this situation, but I can understand why Steve did, because I think you feel really pressured to like, okay, I know that I'm only going to have a certain number of turns in the match, like whatever that might be, to get my damage in, and then the weather core is a great way to get that sort of instant power. But I could have seen maybe try to finagle the screen support being a better option.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely see what you're getting at there. I mean, I think Steve is a very, uh, very methodical coach. I think, he definitely, crafted this very carefully with a clear game plan in mind, but I do think it's hard committing to some strategies that you are going to need to win the weather war, and it's maybe making a couple of hard reads about kind of what his opponent is going to do in preparation and in the match. I kind of identify with this, especially against. This kind of reminds me of when I was prepping for, in my first couple of seasons up against Nate and the Buffalont, where I felt, like I was going up against a coach that, just outperformed me on in so many different areas that I felt like I needed to hard commit to certain strategies or gimmicks or something to, kind of potentially flip that advantage, kind of take some gambles, and if they work out, they put me far enough ahead that I feel I can compete, and I think that's not bad, but when I think that it leads to opportunities where you can kind of do yourself a disservice in the match, where I definitely feel I've had more success where I love a good gimmicky set, but I have found more success running some more straightforward ones, and letting myself just kind of find advantage with my plays in the match, rather than kind of getting in my own head and hard committing to some things, which can lead to me making some mistakes in match. So I definitely understand where Steve is coming from with this team, and I think he can definitely pilot it. plenty well. But I think he is going to find himself either, he's going to be in a great situation after, the first, 10 turns, or he's going to be really behind the 8 ball after those 10 turns, depending on how some of these gambles work out for him. But we'll see if it pays off or not as we jump into the match itself. All right, here we are at the team preview. Looking at the Noctowls team here, well, Moth looks really good, as does Unresisted Draco Meteor from Hydreigon. For the Wobbuffets, I think Scovillain actually looks quite good here, as do Shocks and Roaring Moon. Looking at leads, maybe Hydreigon for rocks and to threaten Torkoal from the Noctowls, while I don't know, Torkoal for immediate sun, or Shocks for like a strong initial Volt Switch from the Wobbuffets could be good. What do you think here?
Yep, I would agree with most of that. I would also maybe call out the Roaring Moon on Steve's side. I just think the Scarf Fastmon is sort of a classic lead because you can get your no-brainer, pivot move off if you don't want to think too hard with that. On the Noctowl side, yeah, I agree. Hydreigon could be good. You could also maybe try and get the eject pack trick off early if you're trying to get off an easy Draco Meteor for chip, but maybe it's better to save that for later.
Mm-hmm.
I could also, maybe see a Great Tusk sort of thing as a lead just because it's somewhat bulky and can have the offensive moves, but yeah.
Sure. All right. Well, let's see what goes on. We see Roaring Moon, like you said, nice, just free U-turn there, and the Scarf T-Tar. Turn 1, we're going to see actually doesn't reveal the Scarf, because Roaring Moon can actually outspeed that T-Tar anyway, going into Torkoal for the immediate sun and the Brick Break. Well, we see, the Brick Break comes out trying to hit the Roaring Moon. I think maybe a little bit unnecessary. I mean, I think the U-turn wasn't unlikely, so maybe just Stone Edge there would have been fine, but I certainly understand where he went for it, and this looks pretty good for the Wobbuffets, just getting that little chip, and now the weather is up for them. Noctowls probably, I mean, they're Scarf, so they're probably going to switch to maybe Moth to hit Torkoal on the special side with boosted Fiery Dance, or Tusk predicting rocks.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely would have gone the Stone Edge there. Like, it's actually the same base power as Brick Break when you factor in the stab and super effective and stuff. Obviously, it has the accuracy concerns, but I don't really see a reason not to go Stone Edge there if you're going to stay in. And I think that would have made you maybe had you looking in a lot better situation with the Torkoal. Yeah, I agree on the switch out. I think your suggestions are pretty likely with that. I think this was a great first turn for Steve, getting his sun up basically for free and then getting a big chip off on the T-Tar.
Yep. All right. Well, we're going to see. Yeah, I guess the other thing is that the U-turn reveals that, this is offensive T-Tar with it took that much damage, which is, I think, real good information for the Wobbuffets as well. Turn 2 is going to come about, and we do see switching out into the Dondozo as the rocks do come out from the Torkoal. I think, that was a little bit risky because, I mean, I don't know, maybe he thought that Steve would double, expecting like a Stone Edge or something, but, if Torkoal had just gone for a burn here onto the Dondozo, that would have been pretty scary. What do you think about the Dondozo switch in here?
Yeah, I guess maybe he was predicting rocks, or maybe he was thinking that, even if it does get burned, I'm just going to use this for Rocky Helmet chip, so who cares? Because, like, I don't know. I don't see necessarily what else you would have gone into. Maybe the Hydreigon would have been another option. Honestly, I probably would have liked the Hydreigon better because I think you could have gotten off maybe a free rocks there, and then like a U-turn if you were trying to switch, and then maybe even just a Draco to kind of get rid of that. I think it is important to try and chip the Torkoal down, just because the weather is clearly a big part of the strategy when you have the 2 Protosynthesis Mons and then the Sun Sweeper. So maybe something else would have been better there, but I don't think it's necessarily the worst move. But
yep. Yeah, I don't, looking at what the coaches are going to do from here, I mean, I guess, Dondozo's in here is probably just going to go for an EQ. Honestly, it's probably too risky because, like you said, the weather is such a core part of the Wobbuffet strategy, but like if I'm Steve, I'm definitely tempted to stay in and fish for a lava plume burn while kind of scouting what this Nondozo wants to do. But that's probably a bit too risky for going, risking kind of taking big damage on the most important part of your strategy.
Mhm.
Turn 3, we are going to see he's not going to risk that. He's going to go out to Sandy Shocks, and we're getting at that special attack boost. And yep, it just takes big damage there from the Earthquake. Actually, an almost mineral on that Earthquake. He might have been able to predict the Earthquake, but I don't think it's terrible. He didn't take crazy damage on Shocks. So, he obviously is threatening a lot of stuff here. He could get up his own rocks. So not terrible, but definitely, not damage we love to see on the Shocks. What do you think about this turn here?
I don't know. I don't know what Dundos usually runs, but I don't think it's 100% that it runs Earthquakes. I don't think it's totally unreasonable, and I think you're right. The kind of the worst case scenario wasn't that bad. I think it is important though. If I was Steve, I would definitely feel pressure to click Volt Switch here, because do you really want to stay in and get down to like 3% or have it be rolled to KO or whatever next turn if you don't do enough damage to it? So but I think the pivot is pretty safe. Obviously, the only immunity would be Great Tusk, which I don't think is an incredibly likely switch in. I mean, maybe it is if he wants to read the electric move, but then you outspeed the next turn and can just do something else. So
Yep. All right. Well, we're gonna see what they go for. It's gonna switch out into Hydreigon here, which I really like because you're gonna see it's a really good actually middle ground here. That it resists the Volt Switch and is immune to that Earth Power if Steve is predicting the Great Tusk to come in. So I think that was a really good play by Jimmy and puts him in a real good spot here where, he can get up his own rocks or really, what wants to come in on a Draco Meteor. So I think that was a great move by Jimmy here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think both options are great. I think Draco Meteor is very free, and I think the rocks will pressure Steve's team, especially because it's like you get a guaranteed 25% off on the Torkoal since that's his only remover. So.
Yep. Of course, Steve does outspeed, so he gets the free Volt Switch chip there. Going into Dragonite to eat the Draco Meteor like is planned, but it doesn't come. The Stealth Rocks do come out, and yeah, like you said, the Stealth Rocks are really nice because you get that guaranteed chip on Torkoal, and if you can find a way to take out that Torkoal, Steve's strategy really starts to fall apart. I mean, I like the rocks, but I don't know. I might have valued the immediate Draco damage a little bit more, because just he's probably got boots on the Dragonite, and the only other thing that really hates rocks is the Torkoal, which is nice, but against the hyper offense team, just getting when you have the opportunity for huge damage, that can just be very valuable to taking out a key piece earlier. But I mean, I've got no problems with him setting up the rocks. What do you think there?
Yeah, no, I think one of the things I always tell myself in my matches is always click Stealth Rock, always click Stealth Rock. Like even if what you're doing that turn looks like it might be pretty good, I think the Stealth Rock trick can really add up. I guess like the way I would have thought about it is while Draco is very free there, I think the Draco is incredibly obvious. So you have to bet that what Steve is going to go into is probably the thing that he cares about getting Draco the least.
Sure.
Now maybe that winds up being a sack or something, but I think when you get up the rocks, you can punish sort of the more important part of the team later in the match. So I would have probably done Stealth Rock, but yeah, I think they're both great plays, and it's a credit to the Noctowls for putting themselves in a position where they had two great plays that they could have gone for that turn.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Turn 6 rolls around. There's the Draco Meteor. Bit gets a nice crit there, which is really unfortunate for Steve. We see the eject back come out into the Azumarill, being able to absorb a dragon move that comes out trying to counter it. But the Roost comes out there, and the crit is very unfortunate because that means that the Roost doesn't bring Dragonite back up to full. we know Steve's plan had been that, he needed Draco Meteor needed to max roll twice in a row to be able to KO this Dragonite, so he was pretty confident that he would just the special attack would drop and he'd get right back up to full on Dragonite to get that multi-scale back. But now he's looking at Azumarill and he doesn't have multi-scale to switch into Hydreigon again, or protect him from a play rough or something. So that's really, really awkward for Steve there. And you have to think that, how useful is this Dragonite still without that multi-scale, knowing its moveset?
Yeah, no, and like, I I feel like here's where you can kind of see some of the weaknesses of hyper offense teams, which like this is something that I felt, right, because like obviously it would be great to save the Dragonite because like what is it doing versus Azumarill? It has a 50% chance to hit the Thunder, but like what are you switching into a play rough? And the answer is nothing. Like there's nothing on your team that you can switch into a play rough because it's because you have a hyper offense team, and like this is kind of what I'm talking about. Like you only have so many turns you can do things because eventually you run out of monsters. You don't have recovery, you don't have switch in. So like if Azumarill clicks play rough here, like there's probably somebody on the team that's going to die, and like he's either forced to go for a 50% Thunder hit or like maybe sack something to play rough. I mean, I guess maybe Torkoal can take a hit, but then you're ruining your Sunsetter for like no reason and what they're going to do after a switch in. Yeah. So like like I can really empathize with Steve because this is something that I felt like a lot happened in my matches where it's just like you just feel so pressured to be able to do things because you know that you just have this like limited time period.
Yeah, no, it's very unfortunate for Steve, and he's definitely in not a great position here. We are going to see he's going to go for the Thunder. He's going to miss, and that means that play rough is just going to take D-Knight down, and Steve is then going to send out the Quaquaval, which I think is very interesting. I certainly understand, like we had said, how useful is that Dragonite? The Thunder damage would have been great. The E-Speed chip, probably not all that valuable. You've got the Terragrass on the Quaquaval, you've got the Scovillain, you've got the Sandy Shocks, doing plenty of damage to it anyway. The E-Speed chip probably wasn't, going to really be putting it in range of anything new. So just going for the big Thunder damage, I think is definitely a good play there. I do think the Quaquaval is a little bit interesting of a send out here. Obviously, Azumarill has play rough. Quaquaval doesn't normally have a whole lot for Azumarill, so you're definitely revealing a little bit of you've got some sort of plan here with this Quaquaval compared to something like Sandy Shocks or Scovillain. So maybe not the best play, but also I think we're gonna see in a couple turns kind of what Steve's plan is, and like I said, he's finding himself behind here, so I think he needs to make a couple gambles to really pull back ahead in the match. What do you think of all these interactions here?
Yeah, I agree with the making gambles. I definitely wouldn't. I don't think I would have gone the Quaquaval here, which I think kind of blows your Terra. Is a while since you go that. I personally, if I was Steve, I would have probably gone Sandy Shocks, and then I would have made a hard read on whether to Volt Switch or EQ. Like or not EQ or Earth Power. So I think that's a gamble I would have rather taken than blow my Terra because it's still like I think it's still kind of the same mindset of I'm down, I need to I need to take a chance. And then you can maybe pop your water resist berry if you aqua jets or something, and then you can make a hard read of do I volt switch or do I earth power the great test that comes in. But yeah.
Yep, sure. All right. And well, we're gonna see what Steve's plan, and it's it seems to be a substitute until play rough misses. Doesn't miss there. It's not the best plan. But like we said, he needs to make some gambles, and if this thing can get a sub before it KOs the Azumarill, well, it threatens anything that comes in next. Aqua Step onto the Iron Moth, the Terra Blast onto the Dondozo, Aqua Step or Terra Blast onto Great Tusk CC into Hydreigon or Tyranitar. So I definitely understand that, if he can get that sub on a play rough miss, he's pretty much looking at 2 free KOs there, minus any shenanigans from the Noctowls. So maybe not the plan I would have gone all in on here, but I certainly understand what he's trying to get out of it. What do you think about this plan here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine to fish for. I guess it was 10%, but like, I guess like I said before, I would have gone to like I would rather trust myself to make a 50-50 prediction right than I would to like just kind of count on like a 10% player off miss. I mean, like I don't know if it's like the best mentality to go at with the match, especially this early. I mean, I know you're down from the Dragonite miss, and it would be pretty big to get it off, but I don't think. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it would be necessarily what I would be looking at doing.
Yep. And sunlight goes down, and well, you see, shows how much we know. Second time he gets it. So definitely lucky for him. But yeah, never mind. I guess it was a great play all along. Steve just knows the RNG better than we do.
Yep. He was probably hacking into the server while
Probably.
while
Definitely. He renewed his Showdown Premium right before the match. And yeah, he pretty much has to commit his Terra here. I mean, what else is he going to do? But like I said, he's looking at, one KO, and he's looking at least a KO and a forced Terra from the Noctowls, which is very nice here.
Mm-hmm.
And there it is. Yep, there's the Terra. The Grass Terra easily KOs Azu. No questions about that. Gets the Moxie boost. And of course, with that, we're going to see the Dondozo come out to be able to take that Moxie boosted attack. I don't think Terra Blast Oko's Dondozo here, but I mean, certainly you outspeed, the sub takes an attack, and you can follow up next turn. So looking pretty good for Steve here.
Yep, I agree. It all pays off. So who are we to judge his
exactly.
strategies, right?
The only sign, no matter what you think of the plan, if it works, it was a good plan. And we see he forces the Terra there, lets it eat up that Terra Blast there, and fire back with the boosted body press. And well, now this is he forced the Terra, which is very nice. But what wants to switch into the body press now? Probably not much. And
yeah.
Well, we're gonna see. Steve says, "Yep, nothing wants to switch in. Just get off the chip while you can with the CC there before going down to the body press." And now with the Dondozo getting pretty low, we can go out into Sandy Shocks. And I think this looks really good. You've got, threatening some big damage on the Dondozo. I don't think Sandy Shocks is actually guaranteed to Oko. I think it might be a roll on the Earth Power. So I think his only guaranteed KO was Leaf Storm from Scovillain, which outside of Sun is a little bit risky. So I think trying to push the advantage he has with the Sandy Shocks, maybe forcing a switch, maybe getting a roll on a KO. I think that's a pretty solid plan here.
Yep, I think that's fine. I would definitely go for the Earth Power here as well, because you already know you have to see the Hydreigon, and if it comes in, you can just Volt Switch. So, yeah.
And I think the other thing is, keeping in mind, what your game plan is. Roaring Moon, I mean, at this point, I think is definitely still his game plan. Although, Skullvillain, I think, starts is still pretty good. But we need for that Roaring Moon, like we need a little more chip on this Dondozo and some chip on the Great Tusk before everything just starts dying to outrages. So even if you look a little bit behind on Pokemon here, he's just looking for that chip to be able to sweep late game. Turn 13, he does switch out to Great Tusk, wanting to preserve that, and he goes for the Sunny Day, the manual Sun there, getting the special attack boost and giving the Great Tusk its own boost there. Very funny. Well, this manual Sun, I think, is a little bit, might be a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to say it's bad, because again, like, we're looking for getting the big chip damage, you get the special attack boost, you set up the Roaring Moon to be able to, get like a huge U-turn off or something. Sets up Scovillain, obviously, but, just going for the Earth Power, I think, might have been the more valuable play. Maybe he was just looking for predicting like the Hydreigon Gun or something coming in again.
Yeah, I still think the Earth Tower would have been better. I mean, like, I think you have to put yourself in your opponent's mentality. And if I'm Elf Elves, I'm thinking, okay, I just got crit. I'm not gonna risk an Earth Power roll here. Like, I don't think I don't know. I mean, I feel like, especially looking at what the teams were like. Obviously, Steve doesn't know that it's rest talk. But like, if that got off a rest there, that would have been really bad. And then, like, I think Earth Power would have wrecked everything except the Hydreigon. And with the Hydreigon, you kind of just get your Volt Switch off on. I guess maybe he didn't want to let Hydreigon get like a relatively free Draco. Maybe that was really bad. But if Hydreigon came in, what are you going to do here? You're still Volt Switching, and you're still kind of having something that has to take a Draco. So I don't know.
Yep, and I think at this point, Steve really is going to need to start kind of planning out his end game. I think, you've got two potential sweepers. You've got Scovillain and you've got Roaring Moon. I mean, looking at the Noctowls team right now, looking at, let's see, the Hydreigon's not particularly healthy. Nothing really wants to take a Leaf Storm anymore, except for the Moth, which of course you have Stomping Tantrum for. So I think he's got some clear ways to be able to break down some of these walls, but he's running out of turns to actually pull that off, so he's going to need to really figure everything out here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we're going to see, like I said, he just needs the chip on this thing. He gets the big chip off there, even though he lets Sandy Shocks go down. And then we're going to see him go out to the Scovillain. And like I said, Walt wants to take a Leaf Storm here that doesn't get smacked by the Stomping Tantrum. I think looking at the calcs, I think he needs like 10% more off on like Dondozo and this Great Tusk to be able to OHKO everything with outrages. Some of those might need the sun, some of them don't. So he's definitely getting close to his desired endgame. And I think Scovillain is definitely looking very threatening at this moment in time.
Yep, I agree. I'll just reiterate, like, that the issue with the hyper offense stuff is that you eventually just run out of mons. Like, if you see here, he's down to 3 mons, and he has his weather, et cetera, and so which is basically not useful offensively. So he's on a very limited time frame here. So I would feel pretty pressured here to just try to go for the end game.
Yep. We're gonna see. Steve goes for the Solar Beam, probably predicting the T-Tar there, but also, nice mid-ground play, doesn't drop his special attack if something like the Hydreigon was switching in, and, he's got Stomping Tantrum for this Moth, so, I mean, I think he's pretty happy here. Of course, Iron Moth. It comes down to, how prepared is Jimmy? Is he expecting the Stomping Tantrum or not? And
I would just click Stomping Tantrum.
We're gonna see. He was doing it. He pulls the nice double out there into Hydreigon, being immune to it. And now, well, this looks like just a free Draco Meteor to me.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like that's where stuff like this can happen, because it's like you have this great sort of end game plan, but it's like I feel like Jimmy had enough mons left where he definitely wouldn't want to risk the Iron Moth there, and then it's like you have to get all your predictions right too, which can make the sweep really hard.
Yep, that was a good play by Jimmy, but like we said, Steve needs to kind of hard commit to his game plan and just hope that he can catch Jimmy either unaware or just playing, not particularly conservative with his, advantage in the Pokemon and HP, just feeling like, okay, I don't need to make crazy predictions and, like, do weird doubles and stuff. But he did pull the double, and he's in a pretty good position here. Sunblasted Fire Blast brings the Hydreigon low, but actually could not kill there, and Draco Meteor gets the KO there on the Scovillain. However, it's perfect timing to send out Torkoal and get some fresh sun here. So, well, here it is. You've got fresh sun. You got 8 turns of sun. That's pretty good. And you've got Roaring Moon to, well, outrage and hope it all works out, I guess.
Yep, I feel like that's what you have to rely on at this point. Maybe you can get a couple of crits, maybe like Confusion's only 30%, and I think that's you're really your only plausible win con at this point. So I think it's fine to commit.
Yep. He doubles out into the moon here, predicting a switch probably, but nope. Jimmy just stayed in to get damage off and sack the Hydreigon, and that means that he gets the crit there on the Draco Meteor to go through the special attack drop, picking up the KO, but without the crit, he still would have put Roaring Moon within Rocky Helmet range, so crit's not a big deal there, more just the staying in to spam Draco. I'm not sure. I guess Steve wanted to. He wanted to preserve the Torkoal to get fresh sun after the T-Tar came in, which I definitely understand. But yeah, I don't think it's particularly likely that Jimmy switches there. So that was just kind of rough.
Yeah, I think it was a little rough. I think maybe he was in a bit of a rough position to begin with. So maybe his thought was maybe this is my best luck is if I get this relatively unlikely thing that happens. So I definitely don't blame him for it. And I obviously this is pretty much game over. And I feel like this is kind of what you see when hyper offense doesn't work. Like it's just like you run out of Pokemon, you don't get through the walls that you want to get through, and then it looks like a bad loss. Like I don't think this is that bad of a loss.
Oh no,
I think
no.
It just kind of looks bad because it's going to be 5-0 or whatever. But like, I think he did do a pretty good job getting off the chip damage. I maybe would have been a little more aggressive with predictions earlier in the game to try and get more chip damage. Like I feel like the Dondozo, I don't know. I mean, like this is maybe retconning it, but like I feel like if he would have went Sandy Shocks instead of the Quackball and then just gotten the prediction right, instead of trying to do like the whole like setup thing earlier, I think that would have maybe stretched the match a little bit, and then it would have given him more opportunities to get the chip damage, and then it would have let him have kind of a better end game. I also think you maybe saw the rocks put in a lot of work. Like I think maybe another remover besides Torkoal would have been good. Obviously, I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth here because that would have maybe been another move that you had to put on Quackball, but yeah, I do think the rocks were a little rough.
Yep. Well, we're going to see Torkoal comes out here, takes those rocks damage. However, Draco Meteor with all those drops can't actually KO here. It gives Torkoal 1 KO for the road before we're going to see who gets the last KO. Oh, Jimmy decides to give it to Great Tusk. Photosynthesis boosts definitely necessary here to pick up that last KO and the win for the Noctowls. And yeah, I mean, I want to go back to kind of what you were saying about, the disparity in Mons doesn't always show how close a match is because, you think if Steve also could have been probably banking on the Draco Meteor miss, because if that misses there, you see, he clicks Outrage. I think how healthy is Dondozo? 42%. Let's calc here real fast. Dondozo and Roaring Moon in the sun. Yeah, so Outrage did 41% max, so just out of range there. But what did he have? He have rocks on his side? No. Okay. So that was a little rough. I mean, he clicks Outrage. Of course, the Hydreigon would die. T-Tar.
Sorry, he actually did have rocks because the.
Oh yeah, he just got So the rocks would have had it in range. The So, Hydreigon die, everything dies switching into that. He has to go into the T-Tar to get rid of the sun. And then he, after that outrage, because so I guess he'd have to switch into T-Tar. Steve doesn't get the 2-turn outrage to be able to switch out after that, and then with the sandstorm up, he can then go into Dondozo. That's the only thing that is living a hit there. But yeah, if Steve gets the right number of outrage turns, he can just pivot back into Torkoal after that sand is gone and then clean up with outrage. So that was actually really close to going to Steve if that Draco Meteor had missed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to overstate it too much. So I mean, it is a 10% miss chance, and then you need to get the number of outrage turns and stuff. But I could definitely respect the going for what he thought the win con was.
Yeah. Well, that was a very exciting match, to say the least. Definitely thanks to both of our coaches here. Congrats to Elf Owls and the Noctowls for winning the Paldea Conference and moving on to the championship match. Thanks for helping me pick apart this battle as well, Chad.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
And everyone at home, thanks for watching along with us. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And, well, we'll see you next time for the other finals, if you haven't seen it, or the championship match. See you then.